When you're trying to figure out personal finance, there's just so much information out there. It can be, well, pretty overwhelming.
Absolutely. A flood of advice.
But sometimes you find a book that just uh, cuts through all that noise. It really changes how people think about money.
Hmm.
And today, we're doing a deep dive into one of those books,
Yep.
Robert T. Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
A classic, really.
Yeah, exactly. So our goal here is to unpack the core ideas, the wisdom, but also, the controversy surrounding it.
Right.
We'll look at its themes, strengths, the criticisms, basically give you the full picture of its impact.
And it's definitely had a massive impact. I mean, think about it. Published way back in 1997.
Feels like yesterday sometimes, but yeah.
And it sold, what, over 40 million copies around the world. Translated into like 50-plus languages. It's huge. It's not just a finance book. It kind of blends personal finance, self-help, even a bit of memoir. And it's pretty readable, too, around 200 pages or so.
Okay, so to really get it, we need to start with the core idea, right? The whole setup of the book.
Definitely. It all hinges on this contrast between two father figures in Kiyosaki's life. It's how he tells the story.
Right, you've got his poor dad. That's his actual biological father. Highly educated, worked hard, but financially, well, limited. He represents that path we're all told about. Go to school, get good grades, find a safe, secure job.
The standard advice, yeah? Very traditional.
Then there's the rich dad. Now, this wasn't his real dad. It was his best friend's father.
Right. And this guy, he was a high school dropout, interestingly enough, but became a really successful businessman.
And he taught Kiyosaki something totally different.
Completely different. It was all about financial independence, investing strategically, building wealth through assets, things that make you money.
So the whole book is built around these lessons from Rich Dad.
Pretty much. It's structured around 6 main lessons. And each one is designed to kind of challenge your normal thinking about money, about work, even education. It really pushes for a mindset shift.
Okay, let's unpack this then. How does he start laying out this different way of thinking? What's the first big idea he hits you with?
Well, the very first lesson is a bit of a headline grabber. The rich don't work for money.
Sounds provocative.
It does. And of course, it doesn't mean they just sit around doing nothing. It's about how they approach work and income.
Okay.
Instead of just trading hours for a salary, like in a typical job, the idea is that wealthy people focus on acquiring assets, things that generate income passively.
So money coming in whether you're actively punching a clock or not.
Exactly. Passive income. It's less about job security and more about, well, financial education and building those income streams.
That's a huge shift right there. Not just working harder, but working differently, which I guess leads straight into lesson 2.
It does. Lesson 2. Why financial literacy matters.
Yeah.
This is absolutely crucial in his framework.
And this is where he brings in that famous distinction, right? Assets versus liabilities.
Yes. And he keeps it super simple. Maybe too simple for some, but the core idea is assets put money in your pocket, liabilities take money out.
Give us some examples he uses.
Sure. So assets would be things like rental properties, bringing in rent, stocks paying dividends, maybe a business you own that generates profit.
Things that pay you.
Right. And liabilities. Those are things like car loans, credit card debt, even controversially, the mortgage on your own home because it costs you money each month.
Ah, okay. That definition, especially about the house, I know that stirs up some debate.
Oh, definitely. It's probably one of the most talked about points.
So where did critics say, hang on, that's a bit too simple?
Well, take the house example. Kiyosaki focuses purely on the monthly cash flow mortgage. Taxes, repairs all take money out, so it's a liability in his book.
Makes sense from that narrow view.
But critics point out, your house can appreciate in value. You build equity. For many people, it's their largest asset over the long term.
Right. It's not just a cost, it's an investment, potentially.
Exactly. So his black and white definition is powerful for making a point about cash flow, but it might not capture the whole financial picture for everyone. It simplifies things, maybe oversimplifies for some real-world situations. So it's important for you, the listener, to see both sides.
Okay, so lesson 1 is about assets generating income. Lesson 2 is knowing the difference between assets and liabilities. What's next?
Logically, lesson 3 is mind your own business.
Meaning, start your own company.
Not necessarily just that, although it's part of it. It's more about building your own asset column. Even if you have a regular job, a 9 to 5, he encourages you to start building income-generating ventures or investments on the side.
Ah, so focus on your own financial growth separate from your employer, like a side hustle or investing.
Precisely. Don't just mind your employer's business, mind your own financial business too. It really resonates with today's sort of gig economy and entrepreneurial spirit, doesn't it?
It really does. He was kind of ahead of the curve there. So what's lesson 4 about? It touches on taxes.
Yeah, lesson 4, the history of taxes and the power of corporations. This one gets interesting, and sometimes a bit controversial too.
How so?
Well, the book suggests that the wealthy often use corporate structures, like LLCs or S Corp, to legally protect their assets and manage their tax situation more effectively than a regular employee might be able to.
So, using the system to their advantage.
That's the perspective presented. Now, we should be clear here, we're just reporting what the book says. The actual use of corporations for tax strategy is complex. It depends heavily on location, current laws. It's not some magic trick.
Right. It requires real expertise and operates within legal boundaries.
Exactly. But the book highlights it as a tool the wealthy understand and utilize. It's about understanding the different rules for employees versus business owners or investors.
Okay. So, assets, financial literacy, minding your business, understanding structures. Then we get to lesson 5. This one always sounded bold. The witch invent money.
Huh. Yeah, it does sound a bit like alchemy, doesn't it?
A little bit. What's he actually mean?
He's not talking about printing cash in the basement. It's more about a mindset. It's about seeing opportunities that others miss.
Okay.
It's about being creative, taking calculated risks, and finding ways to create value, maybe even new markets, instead of just waiting for a job opening or a standard investment to appear.
So being proactive, innovative, solving problems for profit, maybe?
That's a good way to put it. Finding financial opportunities or creating them through intelligence and guts, essentially.
Got it. And finally, lesson 6. This one feels very relevant today, too. Work to learn, don't work for money.
Yes, this is a powerful one. It shifts the focus of why you take a job.
So it's not just about the paycheck.
Not primarily, according to Rich Dad's philosophy here. It's about acquiring valuable skills, even if the job itself doesn't pay the most initially.
What kind of skills?
Things beyond your core job function, like sales, marketing, communication, understanding financial statements, leadership. Skills that make you more capable of building your own business or investments later.
So every job is a learning opportunity for future wealth creation.
That's the idea. It really makes you ask yourself, are you working mainly for the money right now, or are you strategically learning things that will pay off much bigger down the road? It's a great question for you, the listener, to consider.
Definitely something to think about. Okay, so those are the 6 core lessons. Now, obviously, this book didn't sell 40 million copies just because of the lessons. What are its biggest strengths? Why did it connect with so many people?
Well, you mentioned accessibility earlier, and that's huge. The writing style is very simple, very engaging.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a dense finance textbook.
Not at all. Anyone can pick it up and pretty much understand the main points, even with zero background in finance.
And that storytelling format, the two dads thing.
That's incredibly powerful, isn't it? It makes these potentially dry financial concepts feel personal, relatable. It's memorable because it's a story.
Absolutely. And I think a major strength is how it encourages that mindset shift we talked about.
Oh, for sure.
It really pushes people to question that default path, the get a job, work hard, hope for the best mentality. It wakes you up a bit.
And related to that is the motivational aspect. It's very inspiring for a lot of people.
Especially if you're feeling stuck.
Exactly. If you're just starting out, or maybe you're in debt, or just feeling trapped in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle, it can be that kickstart you need. It gives you permission, almost, to think about wealth differently.
Okay, so it's accessible, great storytelling, shifts mindsets, and it's motivational. Sounds pretty good. But like any really influential book, it's got its critics too, right?
Well, absolutely. No book this big escapes criticism.
So for listeners who maybe read it years ago and were inspired but now want a more balanced view, what are the main knocks against it?
One of the most common ones is the lack of concrete, actionable advice.
Meaning?
It tells you what to think, focus on assets, learn skills, start a business. But it doesn't really tell you how. There are no specific investment strategies, no step-by-step plans.
So it's more philosophy than a practical guide.
Largely, yes. Which can be frustrating if you're looking for immediate, what do I do next? Answers.
And we touched on this earlier, the oversimplification.
Right. That assets versus liabilities definition, especially. Critics argue the real world is much more complex. Things aren't always so black and white. A mortgage is debt, but the house can be a great investment. It's nuanced.
What about the story itself? Any questions there?
Yes, there's been significant debate about whether Rich Dad was a real person, or perhaps a composite character, or maybe even largely fictional.
Ah, so the factual basis of the anecdotes is sometimes questioned?
Exactly. And if the source of the lessons is potentially exaggerated, it can lead some people to doubt the lessons themselves.
And does this simplicity, maybe the questionable stories, lead to people misunderstanding the message?
That's another risk highlighted by critics. Some readers might take the anti-job, anti-traditional education sentiment a bit too far.
Right, like quitting your job prematurely or dismissing valuable education.
Precisely. Or they might get the impression that building wealth is easier or faster than it really is. The book is motivational, but maybe sometimes too simplistic about the effort and risk involved. It's definitely not a get-rich-quick scheme.
That makes sense. Any other major criticisms?
There's also sometimes criticism around um, the perceived lack of emphasis on ethics.
How
The
so?
focus on things like using corporations and finding tax advantages while legal can sometimes be interpreted by critics as maybe exploiting loopholes or not contributing a fair share. Again, we're just outlining the criticism here.
Understood. It's about how the intense focus on personal wealth building is perceived by some.
Right. The book is very focused on the individual's path to wealth, maybe less so on the broader societal context, which is some critics take issue with.
Okay, so lots to consider on both sides, but putting the criticisms aside for a moment, the impact is just undeniable, isn't it?
Absolutely undeniable. Those sales numbers, the translations, it reached almost every corner of the globe.
It created a whole brand, too.
It really did. The Rich Dad Company, the cash flow board game, which is designed to teach the concepts.
I've played that. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. And then seminars, coaching, tons of follow-up books. It became a whole ecosystem of financial education, or at least financial philosophy.
And you hear it mentioned all the time as a starting point.
Definitely. It's often called a gateway book.
Gateway to what?
To thinking about financial independence, entrepreneurship, real estate investing. For millions, it was the first thing they read that made them think differently about money.
So who is this book really best for then, considering everything?
I'd say it's ideal for, well, beginners in personal finance, people who haven't thought much about this stuff before.
Students, young people starting out.
Yeah, students, young professionals. Also, anyone feeling really stuck in that, 9-to-5 grind or burdened by consumer debt.
People needing that initial spark.
Exactly. Or someone just looking for the motivation to finally start that side business or make their first investment. It's great for getting the wheels turning.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up, if
Yep.
we had to give it a rating, what would it be?
Based on its influence and its ability to shift mindsets,
Yeah.
especially for beginners, I think a 4.5 out of 5 feels right.
I agree. Its main strength is that inspirational quality, that mindset shift. It might not be a detailed financial plan,
Definitely not.
but it makes a powerful case for rethinking your relationship with money, work, and building wealth. It's a phenomenal starting point for changing your financial trajectory.
Absolutely. It opens the door to a different way of thinking.
So, a final thought for you, our listener. If Rich Dad Poor Dad encourages us to question our core beliefs about money,
Mm-hmm.
what's maybe one fundamental belief you hold about work or security or even what it means to invent money that could benefit from its own little deep dive, something to really examine for yourself?